It is the Awesemo MLB Live Before Lock, sponsored by No House Advantage. Saturday night, one of my favorite nights to do shows because we got UFC going on. And then, of course, I get to Live Before Lock with Gundacker. It's the only show of the week we do together. So, man, what is going on?
I'm the weekend crew now, man. So I get to hang out with you and sometimes EMAC, and we got some fun here. And I don't know if the warden's out for the weekend. We get to have a little bit more fun, but I'm excited as well. Nice little slate today, and I don't have to be biased with the Yankees, so we're good.
Yeah, EMAC 2024, and no Yankees on the slate. They had got the full Andrew Heaney experience today, where he got absolutely lit up in the first couple innings and pitched a bunch of strong innings. After that, he had, I think it was like 4 shutout innings in a row. And then the Yankees came from behind to win with the bullpen holding solid. So you feeling good? You feeling good about the Yankees making the playoffs now?
The moonshot by Rougned Odor to change the mood. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think we could make the playoffs, but it's definitely a lot of luck in the last week. Like some of these games are just by the skin of our teeth, and obviously, I think against better teams, we're not going to be as lucky. But you got to win what you're supposed to win. If we can, maybe if the whole club cycles through COVID by the playoffs, we'll be all right. But right now, we're staggering, and it's just like duct tape and band-aids over that hole in the damn wall, and it's somehow working.
All right, and now let's get into today's slate. Now that we've captured Gundacker's heart by informing him the Yankees won. So now, not that he already knew, but we like to remind him, keep in good spirits during the show. But now we talk about tonight's slate, which is chock full of really strong pitching options, a couple of really bad pitchers too. But at the top, there's a bunch of really good pitchers. So we've got Brandon Woodruff, Yu Darvish, Charlie Morton, Luis Garcia, Julio Urias. Combine 2 of them together. But anyway, those guys at the top, kind of in a tier of their own. So a couple of questions I'm going to ask you. First of all, how much are you prioritizing paying up for pitching today? And then which of the top end guys are the most important to you?
Yeah, I mean, I do have a nice so I only have like 2 tier 1s right now, but I got a couple tier 2s that I'm solid with. I'm leaning a lot on Morton and Darvish, it looks like, early on. But I like the diversification I have in my lower end, so I don't feel like I'm going overboard with what I have. And the lines are just kind of gelling. I think what's making it happen is I'm ending up with more Marlins and Pirates than intended. So I guess because I'm squeezing those guys in, I got to go pitching, and I'm sure we'll talk about it. But there's one stack that has 3 6K players that really makes you choose between high floor pitchers or a little bit more of a risky situation. But for the most part, it's a moderate prioritization today for upper end pitching.
Yeah, and by the way, the MLB Top Stacks tool, that is free to use today. We're talking about pitchers now, except this slate more than any, I feel like some of these stacks, and they've really influenced, their ownership on these stacks is really influenced by the pitchers, because as a result of what you just said, there's a bunch of really good hitters in really good spots on DraftKings, like the Rays, the Reds today, who just aren't picking up that much ownership because everybody's looking to pay up for pitching. So the reason I have to bring up the offense in my overall pitching strategy today is that, for sure, Yu Darvish, Brandon Woodruff, Julio Urias, Charlie Morton, Luis Garcia, these guys are all in really strong spots, and I think all of them warrant consideration. However, I kind of like the idea of getting to some of these lower-owned offenses that are really expensive. I think that's the best way to get leverage off the field today, but you can't do that if you just pay up for pitching, because DFS would be a lot easier. Just be like, I'm paying up for the most expensive offense. I'm paying up for all the most expensive pitchers. With salary constraints, that's not doable. So for sure, I like some of these pitchers on the high end, but I'm finding myself a little bit underweight to the field on certain guys like Brandon Woodruff, Yu Darvish, even though I really like the spots, because I'm trying to pay up for offense to be a little bit different. And I don't just want to be on the same expensive pitchers and then the same cheap offenses everybody's on. So I think one of the easiest ways to make builds that are a little different is you pay up for a pitcher, maybe go a little cheaper as an SP2, and then you go to one of these more expensive offenses. So is that something that you're also kind of trying to prioritize, or is it just you like the safety of the high-end pitchers today?
No, so the thing with the high-end guys is, like, I think we get a solid floor, but I don't necessarily think that the ceiling out of these guys, like Morton, Darvish, like, I don't think that's a true constant as much as it is. I'm just all right, I probably don't get less than 18 in this spot, but in terms of like really extracting the super upside, I don't think that's as much of a lock. That's why I'm willing to have a little less of the top end and to just kind of spread out a little bit more, like Mcclanahan. I even have some Garcia in the mix, and then I guess Jose Barrett, guys like that I do know have that ability, that are going to be a little bit more volatile floor wise. Because I think there's a lot of upside offenses today. And while we were talking, that Dodgers lineup came out, and I think this is our first look at the Death Star Dodgers, man. So I kind of want to get in on that one too, with Trey Turner leading off. So I'm with you, man. I think there's a lot of fun offenses here, and no matter if we're just straight up leveraging against what the field is, I'll be happy concept wise with knowing that, hey, if I get a little bit more invested in the bats and the pitchers, I think that's fun. I could see the range of outcomes for that work. And then if it flips the other way with the field going that way as well, I think it makes sense to go high end. So we're just kind of betting the failure rate and hoping the field's wrong and we're right if we are going to be team contrarian, which you're the captain of.
Yeah, certainly for baseball, maybe less so for other sports, but baseball I always like to go contrarian, but still at the top. There are pitching options that it's not like I'm not going to be getting to Brandon Woodruff and Yu Darvish. I'm just a little bit underweight to the field in my build right now. Charlie Morton is actually my favorite of these top end pitching plays. I find that the salary savings he offers is pretty important for this slate. The 9,400, getting the $700 discount from Yu Darvish, $1,100 cheaper than Julio Urias. For my lineups, I've really needed that kind of salary savings today. And I know you said that your two favorite plays on the high end, Yu Darvish, Charlie Morton. While I certainly don't have issue with either of them, I'm very high on Morton myself and Yu Darvish. Are you not concerned with his recent results? Because they've been kind of crappy in good matchups.
For Darvish, that's what I was saying. Like, his floor is, like, if we're holding our breath for double digits, like, I'm cool with that. And it's the D-backs, he's at home. But his ceiling isn't as consistent. That's why he's not like as much of a priority to me today as maybe those offenses are. So exposure wise, I'm prepared to have the second most of him. Morton's my highest own right now. But because he has been somewhat inconsistent results wise, I'm fine with allowing that to say, you know what, let me go get some more red stacks at $18K for 3 players and live with the results. But I'm with you on Morton. I think he's my favorite points per dollar. And anytime you get a chance at the Juan Soto-less Nationals team, I'll chip in a chair that. And I touched on, like, he's pitching. The Braves are pitching for position. I think they were a half a game or 1 game out from first place in the division. So not to get overly narrative driven, but it's a meaningful game for them. And he's a guy that they need to lean on to get innings and perform.
Yeah. And most importantly, the Nationals lineup, like you mentioned with that Juan Soto, it's bad. And their lineup, even as is, has been poor lately. But here's the Nationals lineup from top to bottom today. Stevenson, Alcides Escobar, Hernandez, Bell, Parra, Kieboom, Garcia, Adams, and then Josiah Gray in the 9 spot. I don't know. Josh Bell's been pretty inconsistent over the last couple of years. Maybe you could say him. Other than that, I'm not convinced there's a single other hitter in the lineup that's big league caliber right now. So that's about as easy of a matchup as anybody could get. And also, like I said, amongst those top end guys, Charlie Morton being a little bit cheaper, that makes him the priority play amongst the chalky options. And then, as I was talking about with Yu Darvish before, he's just the upside. And I think it's something you said too. I agree the floor is pretty solid for him. But in terms of the upside, the last time he scored 18 or more fantasy points, do you know how long ago that was at this point?
No, but it seems like forever.
It was June 27th. And that was also a start against the Diamondbacks, the same matchup. He scored 21.3 DraftKings points, solid result, but it's not like he broke the slate. In terms of games that he's actually broken slates this year, he had a 35 fantasy point game against the Dodgers in June. And then you go back to a home start in May 17th at home against the Rockies, where he scored 37 DraftKings points. Darvish has really consistently been kind of in like the 14 to 18 DraftKings point range for a lot of the season. And he hasn't seen a lot of the same upside we've seen from in previous years. Who knows what that could be? It could be because of the sticky substance thing. It could be a myriad of other factors. But yeah, Yu Darvish, I think for sure, if you're playing cash games, I think you could say he's probably the safest pitcher on the slate. But for upside, I'm looking at somebody like Charlie Morton, who I prefer a little bit more. In this top range, though, are there any guys that you do not like or you are getting to way less than the field? So guys like Luis Garcia, Julio Urias, and Garcia is going to be a different play on FanDuel versus DK because of the price point difference. But first, in terms of DK, those guys both priced over 10K. What do you make of them as plays?
Yeah, I mean, Garcia, like you said, Garcia on DraftKings have a lot less of but the opportunity is a little better on FanDuel to kind of get him in there. I guess right now I don't have any Austin Gomber. It looks like he's projected for 13%. I was on the Herman Marquez train, but Gomber's ownership is kind of unique to me because I am somewhat there on Shane Mcclanahan right now. It's one of my tier twos, and for him to come in below the Coors lefty is intriguing to me. It makes me wonder if I'm getting Mcclanahan at a pretty nice premium because I think I'm over almost two times the field right now on Mcclanahan. But the top end guys, I'm kind of sitting alongside the field outside of Garcia. Urias is one that I was curious with, waiting on that lineup to come out, and Joe Madden went full on Madden, lead off Justin Upton, 8-hole pitcher. He's in his bag of tricks here. But I think Urias's, historical pitch count makes me think that, in a 1v1 versus him and the 2-3 other top end guys, he's always going to fall below those for me in terms of priority. But it is a spot that he should thrive in. So I might go back and meditate on that a little bit, but I seem to be pretty on par with the field with everyone except Garcia on DraftKings.
Yeah, I find it really hard to prioritize Garcia, and it's not even that I don't think that he's good. He's a weird prospect because he was really unheralded in the minor leagues, didn't even have all that spectacular minor league results, and then all of a sudden he gets called up to the big leagues and he starts lighting the world on fire. But it's all numbers also that if you look at his peripheral stats, it all seems legit, but given the lack of background of him being that type of pitcher, it's hard to really trust going forward. The other thing also, 10,300 now on DK. He's more expensive than Morton, more expensive than Darvish, more expensive than Woodruff, and I think all those guys are better pitchers. So with that in mind, I do like the matchup against the Twins. I think it's a high strikeout spot, but I just can't really get to Luis Garcia because there's a lot of high-end pitchers on the slate, and he just falls behind those other guys. But then I'll ask you, for FanDuel purposes, Luis Garcia is only 8,300. That's a spot where I think he becomes a much higher priority. So what do you make of him at the 8,300 price tag on FanDuel?
Yeah, I've got some really crazy ceiling lineups with Garcia at the helm. So yeah, I like the $2,000 discount. The Twins lineup came out without Garver and Josh Donaldson. And now that leaves us with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys in this lineup that strike out almost 30% or greater against righties. The rest of them are contact guys, but you're seeing a lane of success here for him to maybe steal some more strikeouts than if this was your even your lineup from last night, Twins. So I think because of that, I think the risk reward is a lot more fair at 8,300, and you can maybe cushion the landing if he didn't quite deliver, because he's still going to give us a pretty elevated xFIP to righties. He does perform stronger against lefties when it comes to xFIP and really strikeouts. So I'll take the discount on the price. But if I'm going to pay 10 plus K on DraftKings, it does feel a little bit warm and fuzzy to go get some of those guys that feel like give me a higher floor ceiling ratio. Maybe talking through the strikeout lineup for the Twins, maybe I should, move the needle just a little bit on them, just because I do think this is a high strikeout lineup. But right now I wasn't at the field. I was probably at 13 to 12%, and the field we got them at 17. So I'm a little bit below.
All right, and now I have a question queued up for you here because we did get a super chat from Mark Cathelza, but it's also going to tie into the guy that I was just about to ask you about, because somebody you mentioned, because he had asked Berea or the Rays pitcher DKGPP. Now, Rays pitcher, that is Shane Mcclanahan today. Mcclanahan, the one concern I have is that he doesn't often work very deep into games. They've been pretty cautious with his pitch count. Good matchup today against the Orioles, but also you look at the strikeout stuff from Mcclanahan, and if you just look at him based on the eye test and you just watch him, you'd be like, wow, this kid has fantastic stuff. Really well-regarded prospect, performed really well in the minor leagues, and then the big league level this year, 3.74 ERA, 3.99 expected ERA. The big thing for fantasy purposes, 28% strikeout rate. So Shane Mcclanahan, I certainly see the upside. I'm personally struggling to get to him a little bit just because of where his price point is on DK at 8,500 and some concerns about him working deeper into the game. But even with that said, as for our Cathelza's question, Barrios or Mcclanahan, it's Mcclanahan for me. I assume for you as well, based on what you said before.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more there. Mcclanahan right now is my third highest owned pitcher. 8,500. I could take 16 DKP as kind of my hopeful floor and hope for 20 plus. 90 pitches about what I got on him in terms of what my expectation might be. The only concern I did have was it was not a complete lock for there not to be rain involved. So maybe I got to keep my ear to the ground on that one. But 8,500 right now, Mcclanahan's my SP3 in terms of ownership. I have some Barrios too, but I think we all kind of concede the Red Sox feel a little bit more menacing than the Orioles. Even though I'm a proponent of stealing complete games out of these doubleheader 7. Sometimes you just get lucky with a guy going 7. But I'm leaning more towards McClanahan here.
Yeah, so earlier in the day, I was interested in Barrios just because it looked like he wasn't going to be picking up ownership. But now you consider that he's fairly popular on DraftKings and at the 8,800 price tag. It's such a tough matchup against Boston. I would just rather look elsewhere. So McClanahan for me as well. Also McClanahan, now that he's single-digit ownership, that's a little bit different than what he looked like this morning when I was doing the strategy show with Adam. So, yeah, I think McClanahan, good GPP pitcher. And then something else, too, that I'm going to add about him is even though there are concerns about how deep he's going to be allowed to work into the game, his pitch count has been stretched out a little bit in recent starts. So bringing it up right here, we had earlier in the year, he was throwing like high 60s, mid 70s pitches. His last 4 starts, 91, 93, 89, 88 pitches. So still, getting 90 pitches out of McClanahan or somewhere around there, it's not like he's crazy restricted. It's not like most pitchers are going over 100 anyway. So that's become less of a concern for me now at this point of the season as compared to earlier. Considering his ownership, I like the upside in tournaments. Now let's talk about some of the cheaper pitchers, and somebody specifically I want to ask you about is Austin Gomber. He's become a little more popular as the days gone on now, somebody picking up double-digit ownership, 12%. So Gomber, obviously tough matchup at Coors Field. However, going up against the Miami Marlins. So we've got, I hate these games, by the way, these Coors Field games, because number one, the Rockies offense sucks. And then sometimes they just have games like yesterday where it's like, hey, it's Coors Field. We just score a bunch of runs because we face bad pitching. And then also a position player ends up coming into the game later in the day. That'll happen sometimes at Coors Field. But on paper, the Rockies and the Marlins have arguably the 2 worst offenses in baseball. So Austin Gomber, it's kind of interesting because we're seeing both the offenses really popular, but still some ownership going to Austin Gomber. So what are you doing with him as a cheap SP2 on DK?
In my first rough draft of creating that pitcher player pool, I just didn't have him. It might be just because I'm historically a guy that doesn't play Coors pitchers. Like I said, I went to Marquez. I thought that was a good spot, but I wasn't really there on Gomber. It's a 6,600. Like if you treat that as one of those Reds bats and you get home run points, man, I'm not going to push back on it. But so far he was not in my player pool, but it's one of those spots where you look at that Marlins lineup and I understand it. Like this is bad. So it's a wide range of outcomes here. I have leaned on a lot of these really players from both games. You mentioned, Rockies offense, not good. But because of Coors Field, in 2 of their last 4 games, they've put up over 10 runs and a couple of home run barrages like yesterday. And yesterday was off a good pitcher. So this is definitely one of those spots where we're all back on him and Luzardo pitches a gem. But no, right now I'm not there on Gomber, but I completely understand it. So I wouldn't want to be the one to talk people off of it.
So on the other side, I am on Luzardo today. So here's the reason why. I'm betting more than anything. I'm betting on arm talent. I still think Luzardo, he's got good stuff. His average fastball velocity is 96.3 this year. We're not that far removed. Just a year ago, Jesus Luzardo was considered the number 1 overall pitching prospect in baseball. The results this year have certainly left a lot to be desired. His last start against the Mets was pretty solid. I'm hoping that he's able to rediscover something in Miami that he kind of lost in Oakland. The other thing also is that Miami, they have a ton of good pitching prospects. This is a team that's done a really good job of developing pitchers over the last few years. And also, if you look at our top stacks tool, which is free to use today, the Colorado Rockies are pretty negatively leveraged on DraftKings. They currently have a 16% ownership share, making them the most popular team on the slate compared to a 9.3% chance to be the top stack. So massive negative leverage odds on the Colorado Rockies. So I'm going to be underweight to them as a stack. I'm trying to take advantage of it. I'm going to Luzardo. He still has good stuff. It's Coors Field. Of course, he get lit up, except he's projected for less than 1% ownership. And I think he offers good leverage. So I'm also trying to build lineups that are a little contrarian, like I said, where I'm trying to go cheaper at pitcher and then pay up for some offenses, which is the inverse of what everybody else is doing today. And one of the ways that kind of makes sense to me that through my process pops up is Jesus Luzardo at 0.5% ownership, under-owned as a pitcher. The offense is going up against his over-owned. So I'm going to be on Luzardo, not a crazy amount, but probably like 10% or so. What do you make of that?
Godspeed, brother. I don't have any. I feel like I would be more inclined to get to Gomber than Luzardo here. We've definitely seen Luzardo flash greatness last year, and I've been wondering where that is. But like, it doesn't look like a thing of unluckiness. You know, that 4.6 xFIP to righties. Elevated average, elevated home run per nine seems like Coors Field's maybe not the place I want to hold my breath and for him to get it. But like, your justification is sound, right? It's a game of failure and success rates for baseball. And there's at least some strikeout potential there, and his swing and strike rate has still been over 13%. So I wouldn't be stunned if he had a solid game here, because the Rockies just aren't that good. But I don't have them.
Yeah, I have. I've unfortunately been rostering a lot of Coors Field pitchers lately, and it's something I haven't done in the past, just by my process based on ownership. Like, there's been a bunch of slates this year, at least ones lately, where I've gotten to offenses who are or pitchers going in Coors Field. The reason being is the Rockies' offense is so bad that it's hard for me to not pick on them, especially when they're popular at Coors Field. There's sometimes where they're under-owned in Colorado. Like yesterday, they had no ownership. So here's a lot of the ways that I like to approach Coors Field, because the Rockies' offense is so bad. If nobody's rostering Colorado, I want to play them because It's still Coors Field. There's upside. If nobody's rostering the pitcher against them and everybody's stacking their offense, I want to roster the pitcher against them, because it's still the Rockies' offense. It's towards the bottom of the league in basically every single metric that weights for ballpark. So obviously they have the benefit of Coors Field, but I think that Jesus Luzardo is successful on the slate more than 0.5% of the time. I think he ends in the optimal lineup more than 1 out of 200 times. And on the flip side, I don't think the Rockies end up being optimal nearly 20% of the time. So I'm going to be on the other side of the game, not in a massive way, but overweights the field, and cross my fingers, hope it works out this time. But any other cheap starting pitchers that are catching your eye on this slate?
Man, after last night, Cal Quantrill's performance has me looking at Eli Morgan.
All right.
It's just like one of those, like, I don't love the clicks here, but Tigers are the Tigers. Morgan does have some strikeout ability, almost over a 1 in 4 K rate to both sides of the plate. So 7,400, man, if you could sell me on 14 as a reasonable median range of outcomes, and then maybe he goes full on Quantrill like last night, I'm there on it. But it's definitely not a high level of confidence. Maybe I'm just point chasing Quantrill last night, because boy, did I miss out on that one.
So by the way, as you're talking, we just got news, as the YouTube chat has mentioned, we have the start of the Tigers-Indians game will be delayed due to rain. So let me look at I didn't see anything that stood out as bad on the weather report.
Yeah, I saw a couple of pop-ups for like Baltimore, but I didn't have any like strong things to keep an eye on. Just like there could be some delays. So, but I don't like to play weather, man. So hopefully we have some more clarification.
I'm going to my number one trusted weather source, Google.com. All right. Looks like about a 15% chance. And this is not something that's massively concerning to me, at least looking at the weather report right now. So maybe starts in delay. I don't think this is at risk of being canceled, but Eli Morgan, I kind of like him as a play too. Earlier in the day, he was picking up a little bit of ownership, and it was something that Adam and I were kind of like, boy, it seems risky that Eli Morgan's projected for 16% ownership at the time. He doesn't have that ownership anymore. Now we're looking at Eli Morgan as a pitcher who is projected for 6.8% ownership. His numbers this year, he's giving up a lot of runs because he's giving up hard contact, 6.75 ERA. But the strikeout stuff, he has a 26.1% K rate, a 3.7% walk rate. Those are all pretty promising numbers for a young pitcher. The stuff isn't good. He has a 90.5 average mile per hour fastball velocity. But honestly, we're really struggling to find cheap starting pitcher. Positive matchup. Like we said, really strong strikeout to walk rate. So I'm on board with you on Eli Morgan. He's actually the cheap pitcher that I like the most in the context of the slate.
Yeah, that's one of those aim for the bushes, right? You jump off and hopefully it hits. It does seem like I don't necessarily think he gets shelled a ton in this spot, and I didn't really find myself with any full dedicated Tiger stacks. A couple of cherry pickers that are in the pool. So yeah, I'll accept the results, and I'm not giving up too much equity to get exposure to him.
Yeah. And then, I mean, the other thing too with Eli Morgan, 7,400 price tag, there's really not very many cheap pitchers to feel good about today. I mean, if we look under 8K on DK, once again, FanDuel, easy enough to just pay up for pitching just because of the difference in a pricing structure. And also if somebody like Luis Garcia, I keep getting mixed up. Luis Garcia, 8,300, Charlie Morton, 8,700 on FanDuel. Whereas over on DK, we need a roster 2 starting pitchers, and guys priced under 8K, the pickings get really thin here. We've got Eli Morgan, Austin Gomber. I just brought up Jesus Luzardo, but one of the other things that kind of draws me towards Luzardo is just how weak the other options are in this price range. Like, there's only a handful of guys that I really think are viable. And of those guys, there's very few of them that I feel any bit of confidence in. I think any of these guys could get lit up. So people in the chat want to shout out guys who they like as cheap pitchers. I would be kind of interested in, but it's hard to really find guys that we're confident in. Sean B saying that Morgan is very risky. To an extent, I agree. I mean, there's a lot of reason to think he could regress. His strikeout numbers are not nearly in the minor leagues what they've been so far in the big league. So expect some regression there. And his stuff isn't good, except the strikeout to walk ratio is something that kind of draws me to him. That and the matchup against the Tigers. Everything the Tigers did in July, total aberration. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, it just seemed like a Cinderella story that got hot and now kind of, facing regression a little bit. And even in spots where, they should thrive right against average at best pitching, we're kind of seeing that fall flat. So teams get hot, teams get streaky, and we want to hope that it lasts a little longer and the Tigers go on some crazy run and make the playoffs. But yeah, I don't think they were ever meant to be good. So they're not.
By the way, because people are asking about it, the Boston-Detroit game, that is a 7-inning game, not a 9-inning game. We've got, I don't know if he's being serious here, but we've got Chunk the Deuce says he's playing Barria tonight. Good luck with that. That's even by my estimation, where I like to go contrarian and make some crazy plays. I think rostering pitchers against this Dodgers offense, especially not a good one in Barria, that is a risky business. So just because you mentioned it before, and we'll talk about offenses in a sec, but that Dodgers lineup today, because they've got Trey Turner in there, and Mookie Betts is in the lineup after he was dealing with some. He left the game early yesterday with an injury, and then also Corey Seager's been out of the lineup this year. Here's that lineup for the Dodgers today: Trey Turner, Max Muncy, Mookie Betts, Corey Seager, Justin Turner, Will Smith, Chris Taylor, Cody Bellinger in the 8-hole. Good luck. That lineup is an absolute murderer's row. That's the best offense I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's as Brian Cashman uses the term, fully operational Death Star. That sucker looks like it's greased up and ready to go. So, yeah, if the Luzardo guy's telling you to don't play Barria, maybe listen. I'm in on that.
Yeah, that's the Barria. You're gonna need a lot of hard hit balls going at hitters, I think, for him to work out. There is one guy here that we have Sean V in the YouTube chat's bringing up, and I think I could get behind this one, actually, even though I'm not getting to him right now. I think that it's understandable. Tanner Huck, who is pitching really well at the big league level this year, 2.45 ERA, 2.93 expected ERA. The strikeout stuff has been exceptional, 33.7% K rate. He's also had a little bit of a longer leash now than he did earlier when he first got called up. But Tanner Huck is also somebody who's considered, somewhat of a prospect, 25 years old, but had good minor league success. He's the 8th ranked prospect in the Red Sox organization. What do you make of him as a pitching play today?
Yeah, he's got a lot of strikeout potential. 70 to 80 pitches seems like a reasonable expectation for him pitch count wise. Maybe he doesn't get you that 5th inning to be win eligible, but maybe it's time to go ahead and get him stretched out to that spot in this 7-inning game. I'm not sure, how deep, what they tapped into bullpen wise on the first game, but yeah, he's kind of paying off this price point without being eligible to be on or off the hook, or on the hook for the decision. The swing and strike rate 13%. It's just pretty nutty. I do think that hard contact to fly ball rate against righties is something I'd like to see to be a little lower, but the xFIP is there and the strikeout potential is there. So if you're going to get that at a decent ownership, it seems like a lot of people just want this game to not exist for DraftKings sake. But if you're going to get that ownership at a decent premium, I mean, I definitely don't mind putting a chip and chair on 30+% K rates against a team that might be a little tired of being on their feet today.
Yeah, and I think Tanner Huck. I think that's a good shout out by Sean V in the chat. I certainly like the strikeout upside there. So For pitchers, I think that pretty much covers anything I'm actually interested in. My biggest contrarian play is Jesus Luzardo. And once again, I'm not playing him like in 30% of my lineups or anything, but getting like 10% or so of Luzardo, I think is a reasonable way to get a little bit of leverage on the slate. Anybody else that we've not brought up that's making it into your lineups?
I guess we didn't really chop up Urias, right? I think we just mentioned that maybe the price is putting us back, but no, I guess Woodruff. Did we have the Woodruff conversation? No, he's the other guy that like he's kind of fallen down. I like him, but like he's not as high owned for me as the Charlie Mortons here. That the Giants teams is just kind of in the middle for me, right? I could see them, putting up a fight here, maybe giving you less strikeouts than you hope. We've seen that in the last day or so. So at 9,900, like if I think 20 to 25 is more of a floor than a ceiling, like I'll take that. But I didn't end up with a big chunk of them on DraftKings and FanDuel. He's 11K, and there's definitely some more value there.
Yeah. So what I had said about Woodruff, and we didn't really talk about him in depth at the top of the show, but what I'm underweight to the field on Woodruff. He's in my player pool, but my preference is to roster Charlie Morton of any of those high end guys today. He's going to be popular, but all these guys are popular at the high end for the most part. And I like the salary savings he offers because he's the cheapest of the top 5 pitchers. 9,400 for Charlie Morton on DK. And then we've got 9,900 Woodruff, 10-1 Yu Darvish. Over on FanDuel, 8,700. That's also a favorable price point. So to me, Morton is the best of those guys. I don't have an issue with anybody playing Woodruff. I'm just underweight to the field, projected for 33.5% ownership, 25% chance to be a top 2 pitcher. It's really just that there's a whole bunch of top end pitchers today. Yeah. I'm trying to pay up for some offense and kind of can't play all these guys in 80% of my lineups because there's a lack of lineup spots. So nothing wrong with Woodruff. He's just not one of my most rostered pitchers.
Yeah, fully agree.
All right, so we could move on from pitcher then. Let me just check our Slack chat and see. Yeah, nobody asked us any other pitcher questions. So let's move over to offenses. By the way, guys, top stacks tool, that is free over at awesemo.com. So if you want to pull that up, head on over to Awesemo and you can follow along with us. All free info, and that'll let you see some of the data that we're working with over at Awesemo and stuff that helps me build my lineups. Also, I have to mention that today's show is sponsored by No House Advantage. If you guys are new to No House Advantage, head on over to the site, make your first deposit using the promo code Awesemo. Get up to a $20 bonus on your first deposit. No House Advantage, different way to play daily fantasy sports. It's opposed to lineups, salary caps. Don't have to worry about any of that. It's prop-based contest, still tournaments, still GPPs, but you're building lineups based on props and what your overall confidence level is in those props. You label them 1 to 10. The prop you're the most confident in, you give it a 10 rating. When you're least confident in your lineup, you give it a 1. And then you get points depending on if your props hit or miss, depending on the point value that you give them. Fun way to play tournaments, different way to play DFS. That is over at No House Advantage using the promo code Awesemo for up to a $20 deposit bonus. All right. Now let's head over to the hitters, and I want to refresh our top stacks tool to make sure I'm looking at the most recent data because we had some lineups come out while we were on the show. But let's start with that Dodgers lineup because it just came out. Well, just as relative, but towards the top of the show it came out. It wasn't out before we started. The Dodgers are very expensive. Very, very expensive. And we know that everybody's going to want to be paying up for pitching today also. So as a result, we have the Dodgers. FanDuel salary becomes a little less important. So they're still popular over on FanDuel. DK, though, we only have 3.9% projected ownership going to the Dodgers with a lot of people trying to prioritize paying up for pitching. Given how expensive the Dodgers lineup is and how much we like some of the expensive pitchers, what are you going to be doing with this offense?
Before the lineup actually came out, I had him at 8% because I wasn't sure if it would be this lineup. The DraftKings pricing algorithm, I don't know if you kind of picked up on it, but I feel like I can't recall I don't want to say modest, but a slate like this that has so many 6K bats, and even 5K above. I coined a phrase earlier today that says 6K is the new 5K. I honestly can't remember the last time I've seen a team with 3 6K bats like the Reds are. So in comparison to the Reds, I guess the Dodgers are a little bit cheaper. Mookie being 6.4K, but still Trey Turner, Max still knocking on the door of 6K. So I guess from a competitive balance standpoint, kudos to DraftKings for at least making it a little harder. But I want this lineup. Like, I can't not have this lineup. Yami Berea, somebody we want to pick on, right? It's not even one of those pitchers that I could see muscle his way through more often than not. His xFIP is through the roof against both sides of the plate. He's somehow surviving against righties at a ridiculous clip results-wise, the average being below 200, the homer per nine being below 0.7, but the hard contact rate's nuts, 47.5%. The K rate's really low. He's tempting fate and a double-digit percentage walk rate. And this is going to be a Dodgers lineup that through and through, if you got one guy on and you got to go to the stretch and you got to worry about, Muncy or Mookie on base, Corey on base, like there's no at-bats off in this lineup. And it's not a crazy thought to say that maybe this Dodgers lineup is as cheap as we're going to see it in the DraftKings pricing algorithm for the next week or two. So I want it. So I got to have it. I was at 8%. I was, when it came out, I was kind of looking to see where we might have them on the ownership once it did adjust. And it looked like 8% is still potentially double the field. And that just feels crazy that I have that in my hands. But 8%, what do you think?
It's too low, especially because now I know we've got our guy Sean V in the chat who he loves the small sample sizes, and he's talking about Berea, how good he's been his last two starts. Not really though. He's got 7 strikeouts to 3 walks in those 2 starts. He's gotten very lucky on batting average and balls in play. So BABIP for Bari in his last 2 starts against the Twins. 105 BABIP against Oakland, 182 BABIP. He's not generating strikeouts. He's not generating swing and misses. And also his average fastball velocity. This is actually really concerning about Baria. Here's his average fastball velocity by start this year. He started the year hurt, so he's only made 4 outings. So average fastball velocity since April 10th. This was when he was first starting the ship. 95.6 that outing. Then spent some time away from the team. Comes back May 18th against Cleveland. 91.3 average fastball velocity. Spent some time away from the team. Comes back July 25th, July 31st, his last 2 starts. 88.4 average fastball velocity. And last start, 86.3. So I don't know how he's doing. This guy's losing 2 miles per hour off his fastball every single time that he's gone out and pitched. Now, obviously, there's a cap to this. He's not going to be throwing 60 miles per hour 3 weeks from now, but that's pretty concerning to see somebody who's already not a very successful big league pitcher that's seen such a sharp decline in velocity. Then also this matchup against the Dodgers. There's 3 offenses I'm really prioritizing at this point. The Dodgers are 1. The other 2 are the Rays and the Cincinnati Reds. What do you make of those teams?
I love the Reds too, in theory. And I'm probably sick of me hearing this, but it's going to cost you $18.5K to play 3 of my favorite bats there: Winker, Vada, and Moustakas. And it sounds good, but when you put that into practice and you start trying to pinch, glue together your pitchers, it maybe doesn't feel as great to kind of have extra exposure to like Shogo Akiyama and guys like that. But just conceptually, the Reds are a good offense at home. They're in a super plus park, and they get Mitch Keller, who his home run problem has been more so to the right side of the plate, but he allows an elevated line drive rate, low K rate to the left side of the plate. So if you get a couple of doubles and you get in that bullpen, they have this run total for a reason. So I do like them. What was the other offense? The Reds.
So I said it was the Reds, the Dodgers, and the Rays. It's all teams who I think are in really good spots, and also these are teams, they have a different outlook on FanDuel than DraftKings. Right now I'm talking about DraftKings just because they're going really under-owned. The reason that these teams are so under-owned is because they're expensive. It's the thing you said before, 6K is the new 5K. There's a lot of really expensive hitters in these lineups, and everybody's looking to pay up for pitching today. As a result, there's not nearly enough ownership going to the Rays, the Reds, the Dodgers. We have the Rays today, 6.6% ownership share as a team, 13.4% chance to be the top scoring team of the day. The Reds, 6.5% ownership share, 11.5% chance to be the top scoring team. And the Dodgers also, you mentioned before, how if you get 8% of them, you're double the field. All of these teams have massive positive leverage scores because people don't want to pay up for offense today. I get why everybody's looking to pay up for pitching, but for tournaments, I want to make different lineups. Paying up for hitting makes sense. These offenses all have much better chance of being the top stack versus what their projected ownership is. So that's why I'm really on them. But yeah, those are the 3 teams that are highest priority for me on DK.
Yeah, and the Rays are a team that maybe gets slept on because half their games are in Tropicana, and you don't realize that Camden can be that much of a boost. And I mean, Nelson Cruz in the 2 spot in Camden, 5-6 at bats. That's a lot of opportunity. And just from us betting on failure rates, man, Rockies, Indians, Pirates, and Marlins, those are 4 of the top 5 projected owned teams. I mean, you say that out loud, like those are not great baseball teams. So yeah, if we can get some of these upper echelon teams at a decent exposure today, I'm in on it. And, if it burns us, it burns us. But there's a lot of talent at valuable ownership. But you got to go up there and get them price wise. But the Rays, for what it's worth, only Brandon Lau at 6K. So one of the more valuable upper echelon teams.
Yeah. And there's also some hitters on the Rays that have reasonable ownership. And then everybody has reasonable ownership. Nobody's rostering them, but they also don't have price tags that are that egregious in terms of hitters I actually don't mind at the bottom of the order. Like Manny Margot, 3,700, somebody I don't mind getting to. Kevin Kiermaier, 2,800, 1% projected ownership. I don't think he's a bad play. So there are ways we could work in some of these end of the lineup hitters that are cheaper that I also don't think are poor hitters, or at least viable fantasy hitters, because Kevin Kiermaier could steal bases. So that makes him a little more viable for DFS purposes. But yeah, I think that it's still a spot where they're going under-owned, and like you said, also the ballpark, and it's Orioles pitching. The starting pitching sucks for the Orioles. All the relief pitching sucks. It's a favorable matchup no matter who's in the game. So I like the spot for the Rays offense. And then talking about the Reds, I'm surprised that people just aren't on here in a big way because of recency bias. The Reds have been absolutely crushing it lately. And then you look at Mitch Keller's numbers for the year, 7.05 ERA, 6.05 expected ERA. Well-regarded prospect, throws the ball really hard, but it hasn't equated to any results. Even at the minor league level, he hasn't always been dominant. So Mitch Keller definitely looks like a pitcher to go against. And something I said this morning, here's when we're going to see Mitch Keller be viable. Like 2 years from now, the Pirates are going to give up on him. He's going to go to a good franchise, and he's going to figure it out. But for right now, I'm going right back to the well with the Reds and picking on Mitch Keller.
Yeah, the Reds are just kind of stacked, especially if you let recency bias tell it. I mean, Jonathan India is exploding out of nowhere, and then Winker looks like he might have turned it back on. You get Castellanos and Moustakas back within a week. I mean, this is a fun DFS lineup, and it's kind of like the Sacramento Kings of baseball here. Like I like targeting them at home and getting the fantasy points, and I'm here on it. Yeah, where are you at on the Pirates though? Because Gutierrez, I think, is probably one of the more exploitable Reds pitchers here. And looking at this Pirates ownership, I love Hoyt Park. He's probably one of my highest owned players, but I was not. I was under the field on the Pirate stack itself, and for it to come in at number 4 right now, it makes sense park wise, and Gutierrez is there, but it's just one of those. I'm assuming you're going to be underweight just because you hate chalk, but they do give us some low pricing opportunity for the pitching and the park.
You know what's funny is you say you like Park, and you also mentioned Park a few times, and it's a little like I'm trying to, because I like both. I like Park because of the price. I like Park because of the park also. But yeah, Hoyt Park, who's going to be leading off for the Pirates today, almost min price on DK. He's also cheap on FanDuel. I like him a whole bunch. I think he's one of the best one-off plays on the slate. I like the matchup against Vlad Gutierrez. Gutierrez as a starting pitcher has really struggled this year. So overall, maybe really struggled is a little bit overstating it, but he's a 4.74 expected ERA, 5.77 xFIP. You look at the numbers for him, not generating a whole lot of strikeouts, doesn't generate swing and misses, walks a lot of guys. So I don't think Gutierrez is a particularly good starting pitcher. In terms of 5-man stacks, I don't want to play a chalky Pirates offense. This is one of the worst offenses in baseball, but it's curious to me if the guy that I consider to be the best value play on the entire team isn't picking up ownership relative to the other guys. So yeah, I like Park a whole bunch.
Yeah, he's my highest owned player on the slate, and I think it's more just because of his price, but inherently he's good. He was crushing in the minors. He just came from the Yankee system. He steals bases, and he's going against Vladdy Gutierrez in a plus park. So there's not much to not like here, and I'm also stunned at the ownership. I actually, after my first optimization, like I had to go back and get more of Park. I guess maybe a lot of projection systems don't adjust for anything like that, but I love him a lot. He's easily my highest owned player, but the stack itself, I fell under the field, and I was just kind of curious, like, because this lineup doesn't look that great, but it's something's got to give. Bad hitting versus bad pitching. I usually lean hitters, but when the field's on the hitter side, I don't know. Maybe I should throttle back.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird slate because I mean I can't remember a time where I'm gonna read off here are the most popular offenses today on DraftKings, and then we'll have to talk about the Coors Field game in a second as well. But here are the most popular offenses on DraftKings. Of the 5 most popular offenses, 4 of them include the Colorado Rockies, the Cleveland Indians, the Pittsburgh Pirates, and the Miami Marlins. Those are 4 of the worst offense in baseball right now. The Astros are also in there. That's more reasonable because the Astros have a very good offense and the pricing is just way off on them. But yeah, I don't want to play terrible offenses that are super chalky. So I like Park as a one-off. As a full stack, I'm not on the Pirates. But let's talk about the Coors Field game now. And this is another one. Going to be way different looking on FanDuel versus DK because on FanDuel, people are not really playing the Colorado Rockies or the Miami Marlins. The Marlins are projected for 1.5% ownership as a team on FanDuel. The Rockies project for 7.3% ownership. But on DK, 14% ownership for the Rockies, the most popular team on the slate. The Marlins, 8.7% projected ownership, also one of the most popular teams. So what are you doing with the Rockies and the Marlins, and how are you handling the difference of FanDuel versus DK?
So I'm with the field on the Rockies. I'm pushing back on the Marlins. You know, we've kind of made all this talk about the 6K price points for some of these better teams. The Rockies are still, I think, the highest scoring home team in baseball naturally because of the park. And they've only got one guy over 5K, forget 6K, and that's Trevor Story. So it's almost too convenient to be able to get you Garrett Hampson at 2,600. He's, I think, right behind Hoyt Park for me in terms of individual player exposure for me today. And then other guys just kind of fall where they are. CJ Cron showed a little bit of pop yesterday. I think he hit 2 of them. Hello, I am Elias Diaz, 4K for him. I'll walk with Elias here, and Trevor Story is one of my favorite individual plays on the slate. So while I do want to be anti-chalk here, I think it's going to be more so on the Miami side. I'm kind of biting down on the Rockies. I just feel like there's still value left in these price points because the algorithm has just completely dismissed Coors Field this year.
It's so weird, especially it happened more so lately. But why are we getting these Coors Field games where all of a sudden it's like, hey, the Cubs are at Coors Field, cool, the whole team's min price? Like, why is DraftKings doing that all of a sudden? FanDuel is not, and that's kind of where I think these teams make for interesting plays over on FanDuel because while I don't think the Marlins offense is any good, 1.5% projected ownership for a team on FanDuel, whereas on DraftKings, it's only 10% projected ownership. It's a crazy split between the two. So I like getting overweight to the field on the Marlins and the Rockies on FanDuel where they're lower owned, and then I want to be underweight to the field on them on DK. I know you just mentioned you're anti-Marlins. What do you think of them at 1.5% ownership as a team on FanDuel?
Yeah, so I do have I have a nice exposure to like Jesus Aguilar. But that was it. Like I didn't have much that I loved here. I guess just exposure wise, like, yeah, the opportunity is right, but it's hard to look at names specifically. You just kind of have to trust the robot and say, all right, we're going to leverage this, and it's not going to cost us but 5 to 7% to be ridiculously over the field. But if the Marlins are chalk here, like you said, one of the bad teams on the slate that pick up steam, I don't need that. But I also think on FanDuel, there's a lot of worse pricing than their DraftKings counterparts. Like I was able to make some stack lineups and like pitching in general, and I just didn't have that luxury on DraftKings. So DraftKings making stuff really, really tight, and FanDuel is not.
Yeah, it's Coors Field just getting priced completely differently across the two sites. And it's funny, we've seen that with a lot of teams. Generally, there's a little bit of synchronicity, or not a little bit, a lot of synchronicity in terms of ownership against FanDuel and DraftKings for all sports. But we have over on FanDuel today, the most popular team is the Tampa Bay Rays. The Tampa Bay Rays are projected for 19.6% ownership on FanDuel, a crazy high number. On DK, they're projected for 6.6% ownership. So we have a situation I've never seen before, which is our most positively leveraged team on DraftKings today is the Tampa Bay Rays. Our most negatively leveraged team on FanDuel today is the Tampa Bay Rays. I can't ever remember seeing anything like that before. But listen, Spencer Watkins, not a good pitcher. They're super expensive on DK. They're not on FanDuel. So it's causing a big split on the Rays for today. But now let's talk about some of these other offenses. In particular, I want to focus on the Houston Astros right now because the Astros are another team that oddly on DK, I don't understand the pricing here. FanDuel, they're about a neutral stack. Everything is whatever as it comes to them. But over on DraftKings, why is Michael Brantley 3,000? Why is Kyle Tucker 3,700? Why is Correa 3,900? Why is Alvarez 4,500? The pricing here is ridiculously off.
I would love to make it to a live final one day, and I don't even care about winning. I just want to ask what goes into this pricing algorithm. I always dreamed up dynamic responses to ownerships and matchups, but man, some of these, it's they push you a certain direction. And yeah, Michael Brantley at 3K, I can't think of a pitcher that I wouldn't take a shot on Michael Brantley at 3K, much less Michael Pineda. So I don't understand it. I'm as perplexed as you are.
Yeah, it's a weird one for sure. And they do look a little bit overowned as a stack, the Astros, but as one-offs, I find it really hard to not get overweight to pretty much all these guys. Brantley, Tucker, Correa, Alvarez, Altuve 5,100. He's the only one who's reasonably priced, but all of these guys on DK are really high priority one-offs for me, mixing into a lot of lineups because these are some of the top value plays on the slate. And when is Michael Brantley this close to the minimum salary? It doesn't make any sense. So Houston Astros, love this team as one-offs. Now, what are some of the other teams that you're getting to at a pretty high clip? Is there any team that's really standing out above and beyond the other ones that you're getting to more as a stack than other teams?
Looking at mine now, let's look at the field. Looks like the Atlanta Braves would be the next man up in terms of where my leverage is versus the field. They've had a pretty decent trip to Busch Stadium, putting up some runs here, and I'm willing to kind of pick up where they left off. I talked about it earlier. I don't want to over narrative some of these games, but that NL East is one game, the difference between the top three teams. So they're playing meaningful baseball here in the beginning of August, and you got to win the games you're supposed to win. So I think the Braves have a matchup that they can beat. I think Josiah Gray has enough uncertainty and unknown that there's a reason to suggest that, that ridiculous K rate could maybe stifle some stuff here, but them being as staggered as they are and getting into the Nats bullpen, there's a world where the Braves kind of pay off a stack here. I like Freddie Freeman generally on any day. I also like his FanDuel price versus his DK price. But I think the Braves team, they give you that nice mixture of a couple hit for average, a couple base runners, and a couple big power guys that if I can catch them just about any day at we got them at 4%. If I can get those guys at 8% any slate versus average to below average or replacement level pitching, I'll take my chances, especially at home.
Yeah, and so the other thing with Josiah Gray, if people aren't familiar with him, he was the key piece that the Nationals got in exchange for Max Scherzer and Trey Turner. It was not an equal exchange, but the Nationals were trying to dump salary. Josiah Gray is really good stuff. He's a well-regarded prospect, but we haven't really seen great results from him so far. 4.85 ERA, 5.71 expected ERA, 7.47 FIP. He's giving up a lot of hard contacts, so 26.3% home run fly ball rate, a lot of balls in the air. Earlier in the day, I actually thought Josiah Gray could potentially be an interesting lower-owned pitching play just because there's that unknown factor. One of the same reasons it makes sense to go to the Braves, it would make sense to go to Gray. Ultimately, Gray didn't make it into my player pool, but I agree with you. There's such a wide range of outcomes with Gray. And also, I don't know, do you like to look at Zips and Steamer projections for younger players just to see how their projection models rate them out for the rest of the year?
Nah, just at the beginning, if I don't know what I'm dealing with rookie-wise, but I'm more so when a guy gets into the mix, I'll just kind of see what he's done in the minors and there. But I don't think that's not useful. I just don't do it.
Well, Zips has Gray projected for 6.21 ERA the rest of the season. So at least their projection model seems to suggest that he's not ready for the big leagues, given that the Braves offense, which is a team that I kind of wrote off after Ronald Acuna got hurt, then they traded for Adam Duvall, Jorge Soler. They made really significant upgrades to their offense around the trade deadline. And I certainly regret the bets that I've made on the Mets at this point in time. But given the uncertainty with Josiah Gray and some of the projections on him for the rest of the season, I'm with you. I think this is an interesting spot to go after the Atlanta Braves. I know you mentioned Freddie Freeman there. Any other individual hitters in the Atlanta lineup that stand out to you?
Albies and Freeman are kind of the top two favorites for me just because they seem to have neutral K rates and they can fight back against Gray if he is able to bring his swing and miss stuff. Gray so far has been way more successful against righties, but it's such a limited sample size that I don't want to get too caught up in that being like the absolute. And I'm just kind of leaning on the Braves to have just a solid mixture here and play inspired baseball. And there's not much in this lineup that I can't justify. Maybe Stephen Vogt is the hardest click.
Yeah, it's certainly and top to bottom, it's another team. It's a pretty deep lineup. Something else we're seeing with baseball over the last couple of weeks since the trade deadline is so many of these teams that are out of playoff contention sold off all of their big league talent. So we're starting to see some teams that are really deep 1 to 8 in terms of lineup. And then some teams, it's like, oh my God, 1 to 8, they have 0 good hitters, especially like the Nationals today when Juan Soto isn't in the lineup. So yeah, it's definitely a thing where some of these lineups are really deep and other ones aren't, and in a way that we've never really seen this much disparity between the top end and the low end baseball teams. Yeah, so Braves, a team that I like as well. Other than that, though, I think we've hit on all of the stacks that are pretty important to me. Just to recap some of the ones that I'm particularly high on, especially on DraftKings, it is the Tampa Bay Rays. It is the Cincinnati Reds, the Los Angeles Dodgers, all teams that are pretty expensive. So as a result, the teams, the field doesn't really like to pay for them, but I'm liking to get to them for contrarian reasons, pay up to be contrarian. I'm going a little bit cheaper with some of my starting pitching options. Any other contrarian stack we have not mentioned today that you would like to talk about before we move on?
Maybe the Padres deserve a little bit more interest just facing Taylor Widener in that bullpen. They're at a 5.6 implied run total, which is up there with most of the teams, and they seem to be just kind of in plain sight at 6.5%, kind of same as the Reds. So even without Tatis, like I kind of like them to be aggressive, and a couple of guys I don't mind putting against Widener here. Yeah,
I don't have an issue with that shout out at all. I do think the Padres offense pretty noticeably. It's a little worse right now, or significantly worse now if they don't have Tatis. For me also, though, if I'm just paying up for an offense, I'd just rather go to the Rays, the Reds, or the Dodgers. It's a big slate. I can't really roster everybody. So not quite a team that makes the cut for me in terms of priority, but I think it's a reasonable. I wouldn't say anybody's rostering the Padres making a mistake or anything like that. So I definitely understand it. And if you guys want access to all different tools and some of the data that Gundacker and I look at when we're helping to build our lineups, you get access for content nearly every DFS sport out there by signing up for an Awesemo Plus weekly pass for $29.95. And if you're a new customer signing up for the first time, use the promo code MLB Live before lock. That is all one word, all capital letters. That'll get you 25% off your first week of Awesemo Plus Platinum. And for only looking to play MLB DFS, you sign up for the Awesemo Plus MLB weekly package for $15.95. Stop guessing. Start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today. All right. So offenses, I feel like we've covered this pretty extensively in terms of ones that I like. If anybody has questions, fire those in. But if not, I know people love more than anything. As soon as we start a show, like 2 minutes into the show, Gundacker, people want to know who your home run pick is of the day. So we're gonna get your home run pick, and then also I'm going to go over to the Awesemo player props tool, which is free to use. And I'll point out some of the players that we have projected to be the best bets to either hit or not hit home runs tonight.
So I guess the humanistic side of me likes Jose Ramirez, but the top two guys in the bomb detector, one is Eric Haas. And number two is a fun one if you want to put some narrative behind it. Jonathan Scope has almost a 4.5 rating. And according to Twitter, he just got a 2-year extension. So, he likes some narrative. Maybe that bat's worth a little bit more today. And he sends you a thank you ball into the stands.
So Jonathan Scope, his odds to hit a home run today, plus 400. Looks like about a neutral, not great play in our home run model, but that's also relative to the betting odds. Gundacker just making a general home run pick here. I'm going to throw one at you that same odds. This is actually very odd. Exact same betting odds, Jonathan Scope to homer today. Jesse Winker, also plus 400. We have him as the most positive ROI bet. Jesse Winker, plus 400 to homer. We have him homering 23% of the time. That's an expected ROI of 17% on that. So Jesse Winker, 4-1 to homer. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think Mitch Keller's results in terms of homer per 9 to lefties has been a little bit more on the lucky side, maybe PNC Park. All the underlying metrics that I love to see to project homers, the hard contact rate, the line drive, the pull rate, the fly ball rate, that's all there for me. And I like Jesse even more now with a lot of protection behind him to see some plus pitches.
But we've got some people shouting out Joey Vada, who's been absolutely ridiculous over the. Yeah, Joey Votto is so hot. If he was sitting next to Gundacker, there's no way he'd be able to wear his hat and he'd be sweating his balls off over there like Derek Lewis. But Joey Votto, as for a home run pick relative to betting odds, he's plus 250 to the homer. There's almost no situation where somebody should be plus 250 to the homer because that is implied odds of. Let me pull up the implied.
Greg,
odds.
You're about to start another streak, bro.
Oh,
Careful.
yeah. Oh, I'm trying. I'm tempting fate. I know exactly what happened the last time I did this. But plus 250 to homer is absolutely ridiculous odds. Plus 250 implies a 28.6% chance of homering. So Joey Votto, you need this guy to be like a 50 home run hitter for there to actually be value on this kind of number, which he's been great lately, but he's not that. So could Joey Votto homer today? Of course. He's actually one of the players we project is most likely to homer today, but not somebody I'd be willing to bet plus 250 on to homer. So homer pick, I'm going to go with Jesse Winker. You're going to go with Jonathan Scope as your official home run pick for the day?
That's what my algorithm says. I think it's Jose Ramirez, but I'll let the bond detector take over for me.
All right. By the way, we have Jose Ramirez today as 21% chance to hit a homer. Pretty solid. Nothing wrong with that at all. Now I'm going to go over to our strikeout tool, and this is going to make us feel even better about the Reds. The number one prop tool, the number one pitcher under bet in the prop tool today. Mitch Keller under 5.5 strikeouts. That seems like a very aggressively high number that some sportsbook has set on Mitch Keller's strikeouts. Under 5.5. What do you make of that number?
What are we thinking? 80, 90 pitches. If I give him 90 pitches, I come back with 5.4. So I'm on the under as well.
Let's see. Although only slightly. Let's see. Let me look at Mitch Keller's actual pitch counts as of late, and let's see if even. So here's his pitch count. The last four starts: 78, 45, 72, 80. What if you give him 80 pitches?
80, I'm at 4.8. So that definitely would be on the south side of that number.
Yeah, that's a big number for Mitch Keller. He's no good. So Mitch Keller, and by the way, there is juice on the under. It's minus 186. But if you look at our MLB top prop tool, it's not just that we're predicting ones and what the odds over them are being under. We're also predicting an ROI. So even with what the juice is, we still have the bet with an expected ROI of 31%. So we think that at least per our model, the under 5.5 hits 85% of the time, which certainly makes a minus 186 worth betting. One other pitcher I'm going to bring up here for you, Aaron Sanchez. His over under is 4.5 for strikeouts today. I don't know what to make of Aaron Sanchez. We've seen very, very little of him this year. Was once a very well-regarded pitching prospect, but he's dealt with all kinds of issues. He's also been hurt a lot of this year. I don't know how deep Aaron Sanchez is going to work into the game. I don't even know how good Aaron Sanchez is going to be, even if he does pitch a substantial amount of innings into the game. But 4.5 seems very high for a guy who's not pitched much lately.
Yeah, it looks like anywhere between 60 and 80, but as of late from his last two starts, we saw 36 to 59. I usually expect a 10 to 15 increment in pitch count. So if I push that to 75 pitches here, for me, that's going to come back. I guess it would be 70 to 80. At 70, I got him at 4.6, 80 at 5.3. And he has just not had a lot of strikeout makeup, 7.7% swing and strike rate with a sub 18% K rate, called strike rate about 17%. So, I'm not touching him in DFS, but also like I wouldn't, if I was looking at his props, I'd definitely be looking on the under here.
Yeah, so since coming back from the injured list here, we have had Aaron Sanchez pitch 2 innings against the Astros, struck out 1 hitter. Last time out against the Diamondbacks, pretty easy matchup. 3 innings, 4 walks, 1 strikeout. So I definitely lean towards the under there. That is what our prop tool likes. Guys, that is going to do it for us today. We're going right up to lock here. Everybody, good luck today and have a good weekend.
Yeah.